Hi, welcome to another chapter. Let's continue with the rendering process, specifically focusing on the color zones in the face to make portraits look more realistic. So we're starting with faces, which have natural color variation in three primary zones: yellow on the forehead, red around the cheeks and nose, and blue on the chin and jawline. These color shapes aren't just random, they mimic how light interacts with the different areas of the skin and help us to achieve a more realistic look. Now let's put these zones together on a full face. First, the red zone. Blood flow makes the nose and cheeks naturally redder. Adding red here gives the face life and warmth. Using a desaturated red or pink, start with a soft layer over the nose and cheeks. I'm using a hard edge brush first to map out these areas clearly, then blending the edges with a soft brush for a smooth transition. Next, the blue zone. The chin and jawline can have a slightly bluish tint. This cooler color enhances the contrast between warm and cool tones in the face. Using a light blue or cool gray, I'll add a subtle layer around the chin and jawline. Notice how this color tone makes the face look more three-dimensional by adding subtle shading and contrast. Finally, the forehead. This area often has a slight yellowish tone, especially in well-lit conditions, due to its exposure to sunlight. This is most noticeable in lighter skin tones, but can apply in subtler ways across all tones. Using a soft yellow or beige, apply a subtle layer to the forehead using a low opaquity soft brush. The color should be almost transparent, giving just a hint of warmth. After painting these zones, I start by laying down a base skin tone. The base skin tone helps unify the face and give us a canvas to build on. I'm blending these zones gently with a soft brush, letting them flow into each other. See how the colors remain distinct but natural. This is key to realistic skin tones. For darker skin tones, these three zones may be subtler but are equally important. Darker skin often has richer undertones and may absorb and reflect light differently. So a slight adjustment to these colors will help capture the natural depth and richness in the skin. So I'm also painting the yellow, red, and blue parts. Then I'll add the base color for the skin tone. When choosing a dark skin tone, go for a more saturated color. Unlike when painting light skin, we're wheeling toward the left side of the color wheel with lighter desaturated colors. For darker skin tones, you should select from the right side with more saturation. Otherwise, the skin tone can end up looking too grayish. And this tends to be unrealistic. In areas like the eyes, nose, lips, and ears, I also intensify the tone slightly by adding a darker warm color, as these parts tend to appear more saturated on darker skin tones. Beneath the areas where the eyebrows and hair will go, I added a cool, slightly grayish tone, as these regions often appear cooler due to hair growth. I layered some I layered some hair over these spots. Let me go over everything about dark skin again because I made a mistake, so please cut that part from where I start discussing dark skin. Here we go again. For darker skin tones, these three tones may be subtler but are equally important. Darker skin often has richer undertones and may absorb and reflect light differently, so a slight adjustment to these colors will capture the natural depth and richness in the skin. So, so I'm also painting the yellow, red, and blue parts. Then I'll add the base color for skin tone. When choosing a dark skin tone, go for a more saturated color, unlike when painting light skin. We're wheeling toward the left side of the color wheel with lighter desaturated colors. For darker skin tones, you should select from the right side with more saturation. Otherwise, the skin tone cannot look into grayish. And choosing this color tends to be unrealistic. For dark skin, the approach to shaping with light and shadow shifts slightly. Darker skin reflects light differently, with highlights often providing the primary means of creating contrast and defining volume. Shadows, while still important, blend more seamlessly with the base tone, so they create subtler distinctions. And help shape the features. So placing these highlights accurately is essential to capturing the form and depth of the face. It's the highlights that offer that extra contrast and helps the shape Take a look at my process for the illustration now. The initial lights and shadows need refinement since I applied them generally without focusing much on details. In cases like this, I feel the need to be much more precise with my strokes because the focal point of my illustration is these figures, and it's essential that the most relevant parts are the most detailed so that the viewer's side is drawn to them. In areas where it was needed, I added more contrast by varying values to define certain zones better. Throughout the process, I also refined the specific highlights to align with the body's volume, smoothed the transition between lights and shadows, added redness to the areas we discussed earlier, and included previously overlooked details like eyelids, eyelashes, and eyebrows. Another tip, remember to flip your canvas regularly. The face of the person below was poorly proportioned and uneven, but it wasn't too difficult to fix by applying what we covered in the face class. Keeping proportions in mind, I realized that the facial features I had drawn were too small compared to the head and were misaligned. I'm not very experienced in rendering a face with lighting from below, but following the volumes made it manageable. It's essential to emphasize the shadow in areas like the upper forehead, cheeks, nose, and the inner lip. Finally, I polish all the body shadows.